Anthony holds a degree in psychology and human resource management. He has spent 10 years working in corporate in human resources and coaching for employees and managers. As a coach, his favorite topics to work with are cognitive reprogramming, emotional well-being, personal transformation, meditative techniques, and interpersonal connections. He headed nature-based health practices and especially forest bathing, which is the topic that is going to talk with us today, and as a way to make support to individuals more complete and effective. So, Anthony, thank you so much once again to be here with us. I understand by your curriculum that you always been very passionate by people and nature, the combination of the both. So what made you embrace the connection between these two things, between nature and people and nature-based health practices? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Liliana, and thank you, Amarnavida, for having me today. I feel very blessed to be here. And thank you for all the people watching. I know there are some people that I know that are watching here. So hi. For the people that don't know me, I hope this will be interesting for you. I'm very glad that you came, all of you. Anyway. So yes, two passions. And actually it's more than two passions. It's also two things that were always very present in my life and in my career as well. It's only 6 months ago that I decided to finally connect these two things and to really realize what was going on and to be able to connect these two things and to make it a professional activity under the form of forest bathing or bathing, depending on the American or British accent. You can use both. On one hand, the one passion which I call the more visible or formal one was everything that had to do with the human mind and the human behavior. I am one of those lucky people who always knew as a kid or as a young guy what he wanted to do and what he wanted to study, because it's apparently not for everybody like this. A lot of people are searching. I always knew this. As a young guy, I was always very fascinated by what drove people to behave in the way they were doing. I was fascinated by personalities and differences between people, or why they were acting in a certain way. And that was something that always was with me, and analyzing people is something that was always with me. So I studied psychology. I got a degree in psychology, and I added later, like you said, a degree in human resource management. At that time, I was very much interested in people at work, because we spend a lot of time at work, not only a lot of time, but a lot of energy as well, doing what we do in our daily jobs. And that was something that was also very fascinating and interesting for me. And I have to be honest, there was also much more possibilities of work in that line. And so I spent almost 10 years working in human resources in companies, in organizations. And during these 10 years, I've been doing a lot of things like typical HR stuff, like recruitment, outplacement, training and development. I was doing projects for improving the context for employees, or doing personal coaching with employees and even managers. And it's while working with these employees and managers in all the different topics that my interest was gradually drawn to the more personal dimension of their psychology. You know, people at work are still people, you know, and we tend to put a very clear line between our professional life and our personal lives. Well, for me, that line is actually just a concept, because both are always influencing each other. And people are very much driven by what moves them personally, and about their personal dimension and personal blockages that they have. And if they're having conflicts on the work floor, it's usually not really about the topic or the work that they have to do. It's usually about things they have inside of them, and so on. And it's something that kept fascinating me. Slowly but surely, I started developing more work and interest around this, what we call life coaching. It's a term that I don't really like, but it says what it does. I started like coaching people next to their job in all kinds of topics and interests, and with the methods that you just like summed up in my presentation. So that's one part. And on the other part, the other passion was a more informal and more invisible one, which was my connection with nature. And to illustrate this, I want to show you something, and I'm going to share my screen for that.
Please do.
Just a moment. So here you have it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Exactly. I didn't think I would be showing any pictures today, but this is me. And as you can see, I was already very contemplative about nature, and I really liked sitting on the grass and all these things. And as a kid, I grew up. I was always outside. I was climbing trees. I was digging holes in the dirt. I was building camps in the nature. I was lucky to have parents who always went camping and put me and my siblings into nature. It was something that I'm very grateful about, seeing this afterwards. But during my student years, when I was in my 20s, things got more difficult for me. And, life throws things at you all the time. And some of these things are not very nice, and they put you in a lot of difficult situations with yourself. And back then, in my search for happiness, I tried to find all kinds of support, which was like therapists and medical support and so on, but even chiropractors or holistic therapists. Met a bit of everything. And one thing that always that often came up is the advice to go into nature to release tension and to revitalize. Well, my reaction back then, when I was younger, was not as wise as I am now. But my reaction back then was like, okay, I know nature and I like nature, but I don't see what this has to do with my problems. And I would go still. I would say like, okay, on this Sunday, I'm going to go to a forest by my own. And when I was there, I always had the attitude of, come on, nature, give me what I need so I can go back home and continue dealing with my problems. So that didn't work, of course. But that was kind of the attitude that I had back then. It's only when I went on a solo travel into nature, I don't remember exactly which one it was because I made a lot of ones, that I noticed that when I went back home after spending a week into nature, that my mind was much clearer, that my body was much more relaxed, in a more natural state. And for example, this effect that I had after this trip never occurred when I was going on a city trip or when I was going on a very active vacation with my family or my friends, which was always very nice, but it didn't have the same effect. After that, more travel would follow, of course, in my home country, in the mountains in France, in the forest of Finland, in the forest of California, in Iceland, and so on. And slowly but surely, I would start noticing really strong differences between the moment I left and the moment I got back home. And even though I didn't do any strong physical activities, like because you can go hiking in nature, you can do a lot of very physical activities like hiking, surfing, rafting. I was doing not nothing, but I was just wandering around in the forest and just absorbing everything. And even though I wasn't very active, I felt always physically much stronger when I came back. I was more creative. I was more sharp, more focused. back then and still now, I used to play football, and that's just a very simple example. My best games were always the games after these kind of trips, because I felt much, it's true. I felt much stronger. I felt much sharper, more in balance, really literally balanced. My senses were sharper, and at work I would be more resourceful and like more resilient also to everything. So I noticed that nature was not only starting to relax me, but also making me more performant. That was, I think, the word that I want to use. And it literally took me years to experiment, to read about it, to go on guided walks, to continue going into nature for myself, to really polish my understanding of what nature can really do to us. And so I realized not so long ago, let's say 1 year ago, that what I had been doing all this time in nature actually has a name. It's called forest bathing, right? Mm-hmm. And I realized that this was a very good...
What is it? So what is exactly the forest bathing thing?
Yeah, I will come to that.
Yeah, okay.
But because I think everybody's waiting for that answer. But I just wanted to say that that's at that moment I took the decision to add these kind of practices into my work as a coach. And it's going on for 6 months now since I really started doing this, and it's very satisfying to see how it's going well, and amazed to see the great interest that people are having towards it. Right. So about your question, what is forest bathing exactly? What do you do during a forest bath? Because many people ask me that all of the time, and I understand that. Well, let me put it this way. When you go forest bathing, you're going into an immersion into nature. Mm-hmm. It means that you're consciously exposing yourself to all the natural elements with your mind, with your body, and especially with your senses. It's a very important point. During a forest bath, you go into nature with the aim of deeply restoring the basic connection you have with nature, because it's very healthy for you. And I think later in this talk, I would like to talk also about the effects of it. So most people will ask, okay, but Anthony, how is it then different from just going on a walk on a Sunday afternoon with my family? Well, when you're going to these kind of typical walks, theoretically, in theory, you're already forest bathing, which is good, right? But it's what I call not conscious forest bathing. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, it's very good to go outside and not to be in front of a screen all day. And I realize we're doing this right now, but okay. But consciously forest bathing is a total different way of discovering nature and getting exposed to it. And the effects of it will be much more deep, more tangible. And to give you a few examples, when I go forest bathing with people, what we do, for example, is first thing is walk very, very down tempo. We don't hike. We walk very slowly because we don't have a destination. We don't have an aim. We just go around, and mostly in silence also, to be able to really absorb everything that our senses can see and hear and so on. What I ask people also to do, for example, is, sit down against a tree or on the floor or whatever, and close your eyes and just listen to the sounds. Mm-hmm. Just really listen to the sounds of the nature, the birds and the wind in the leaves and maybe water. Recently, what I did also is ask people to take off their shoes and their socks and to walk on a mossy surface and really feel with their feet how it feels, right? And there's also part of a bit of mindfulness in it, which means that, for example, I ask people to just focus on what they see, but without analyzing or judging it, really just absorbing it and let it exist as it is, and kind of switching off a certain part of your brain so that you can really take in all of these good things that are in nature. So yeah. The thing you need to know also is that the name forest bathing is for me not complete enough. For me, it's more nature bathing, because you can go forest bathing at the beach could be absolutely possible, as long as it connects you to the natural elements. That's the most important part.
So you
Yeah.
are saying that nature has power to, in a way, cure people?
Yes.
So how can nature actually cure people
Yeah.
regarding your experience?
Yeah.
And also enables people to self-regenerate in a sense. What is your experience regarding that with your immersion in nature?
Okay. Self-regenerating is a very good point. Okay. First thing I want to say is that even though forest bathing has a very instinctive and intuitive approach, it does have a very strong scientific basis that backs it up. So that's the great thing about it. For example, in Japan, where these kind of practices are very integrated in the culture, where they have social security is like covering this. For example, they
Really?
have it's covering this. You can go to a doctor in Japan, and the doctor will say, "I will prescribe you 10 hours of forest bathing," and you will
Wow.
be sent to a special location for that. There's 64 places in Japan where you can go forest bathing with a guide. And in the beginning, the Japanese did a lot of research about it because they have so much problems with burnout and
Yeah.
even people dying from working too hard. It's very, very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way for the government of finding alternative practices to help that. And that's how this research became something. And from that came forest bathing and so on. So it's actually quite a recent thing. For now, the research, there's a lot of research, especially the last years and months, it's gigantic. They can show that going into nature has a very positive effect on our body and our mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still difficult for them to put the link between both. The why is it happening like this? But they know that for sure. And first of all, I want to talk about the effects of forest bathing on the physical level. And I'm going to take you here again. And this is a figure. I don't know if everybody can read it, but if you want, I can send it afterwards. This is just one figure of the so many researches there has been. It shows what going into the forest does to your heart. So this is the pulse rate, and the black one is when you go in the forest, and this is in the city area.
Mm-hmm.
So it will have a very positive effect on your blood pressure and your heart rate and so on. What else is that your healing from injuries and disease goes much faster when you're into nature more often. It's really a proven fact. And then a very important one, of course, is that stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, these are typical hormones that we release when we're under tension, and that have a good function, but on the long term, they're not so healthy. But when you go into the forest, when you go forest bathing, it's really, really definitely lowering these hormones. And this is what I want to show you here. Again,
this is a result of several studies or specific study? This is
only one specific study. There's like dozens and dozens of them. This is only one that I want to show. So you see here, before walking and after walking, they sent people walking into the city and into the forest. And you can see that in the city, barely been a little bit of difference when it comes to cortisol, which is a stress hormone that can be seen in your saliva. And in the forest, you have like a very, very big decrease, right? And like I said, this is only one of the researches. And another very important one, at least I find it important, is this one: immunity. Going in nature has a gigantic effect on your immunity. So what we see here is the activity of what we call natural killer cells. It's a type of white blood cell which is very important in your immunity. And they sent people for 3 days in the forest doing nothing, just being in the forest. And they measured the number and the activity of these white blood cells. And this is before, see, and on day 1, it rises a lot. On day 2, still up. And after day 3, they leave the forest. But the subjects were still researched after that. And it seems that even 1 week later and even 1 month later,
wow,
your immunity is still working on a very high level. So this is the activity and this is the number. So you see the same kind of a figure. And for me, immunity is not only about not being sick. It's been put into relationship with much more interesting things like the cure for depression. I'm not saying that having a good immunity will prevent you from depression, but there are big chances that working at your immunity will help you get out of depression. Mm-hmm. Immunity is all about happiness. It's all about also these hormones, like we said before. Immunity has a very, very big effect on that. And that brings me to the psychological effects of forest bathing, which is logically also lowering of stress and anxiety. That's the first one. But it also has a very positive effect on your memory and your concentration. They did a lot of research around people who are working, and it seemed that it really has an effect on the freshness of your mind. And it's also a mood enhancer. It really does a lot of things to your mood. I have another figure about this. It's very small. You can see a lot of numbers, very complicated, but just to give you an idea, people were measured on confusion, fatigue, tension, vigor, self-esteem, and so on. And it's very, very phenomenal how going into the forest is changing that. Mm-hmm. For example, minus 50% of fatigue, minus 30% of confusion, vigor is going up, self-esteem is going up. So these are all effects of going into the forest. And the last one is also not to be forgotten, is that it's boosting your creativity and problem-solving skills. Mm-hmm. So as I said before, for me, forest is not only, or nature is not only relaxing you, but it's making you really more performant. Not only because it's taking down the stress, but also because it's really stimulating something in your brain and in your body that makes you just a better person. It's very simple. And how come? How does this happen? Well, again, a lot of research around that. My opinion is that we're just not made to be sitting inside all the time. We're not made to be sitting in front of computers or in front of TVs and so on and being inside. Our bodies are still made to go outside. And whenever we go outside, our senses like recognize it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm outside. I'm in my natural habitat. So, okay, let me become stronger. Let me become less stressed and so on and so on. So we kind of recognize it.
It's like a brain alert thing. You think it's like a brain alert thing that connects with our ancestor way of being, also being on the roots, like hunting and things like that, that we have to be stronger. I think also it could be something like that.
I totally agree on that one. And because if you look at the evolution, it's very simple. It's only the last 200 years that we've been like so much indoors but all these tens of thousands and millions of years that we've been human, we've been outside. So our bodies are made for that.
Exactly. So I guess that I understood by what we were talking that forest bathing is not tightly defined as a discipline. How do you define it, and what is your personal approach to it? So how do you really do it in this kind of sense?
Okay. So yeah, it's correct. It's not a very tightly defined discipline, because in Japanese it's called Shinrin Yoku. It sounds like a very old tradition, but it's not. It's only there since the 90s.
Okay.
And like I said, it's just a certain type of activities that connects you with nature, and you can combine it with anything. You can combine it with yoga, with Tai Chi, you can combine it with bird watching, you can combine it with Nordic walking, with meditation. So there's a lot of possibilities there as long as you're connected to nature. My personal approach is a mix of, let's say, recreation, like wandering, just putting your body into movement and being outside. There's a certain type of meditation in nature that's involved, which is a bit more close to mindfulness for me. It's also about education, about the forest and the effects of going into forest and ecological topics. And for me also very important is particularly aimed at personal development. Since my activities as a coach, it's a very good platform to be working on that too. And when I said meditation, I meant, meditation is calming your mind anyway already. And when you go into contact with nature, it goes very well together. And it's a very light version of meditation that, like I said, more mindfulness, and is very accessible for the people. You don't have to be really connected with meditation or even convinced about it to be going on these kind of things, these kind of exercises. And for the people here who are familiar with meditation, the big difference is that when you're doing more classic meditation, you will be having an anchor point inside of you, like your breath or your heartbeat or your thoughts or your body. You keep going inside. With forest bathing, in my approach, you will do the opposite. You will focus on things that are outside of you. And every time you're being distracted by something, by an emotion or a thought, you will every time go back to something that's outside of you, which makes it, in my opinion, much easier and much more accessible. And like I said, no problem with people who don't have a background. And maybe one last thing is that forest bathing is very much a gateway for me too. It's something that helps for a lot of things, but it's also something for training, for coaching, and in my opinion, like, first of all, nature gives sense to things. I can't really explain it differently than that. And second of all, the closer you get to nature, the closer you get to yourself. And it sounds a bit floaty, but I'm going to give you an example, a very simple example. I was doing a forest bath with one person, and we were in an exercise where that person or she had her eyes closed and listening to sounds. And it was here in Belgium. And at some point there was a small plane, an airplane that flew over us, very low. It was very loud. And she reacted with a lot of anger, like exaggeration of anger. Like she was in that exercise and this loud noise like irritated her so much that she became very, very angry. And okay, the exercise passed and okay, we went on and it went well. But after the first bath, she contacted me again and she said, I really have a problem with anger management. And that's how we started the coaching between us. And ironically, the coaching happens outside. So I think it's built camping chairs and we go outside and we do a lot of talking and methods to help her with that. So that's my approach of it. Yeah.
Okay. So you do more individual based or group based? How you do it? You have a specific time frame for doing it, or it can be random time? Can you explain a little bit how it works?
I do a lot of things. I do solo trips, which are very, very much focused on one person and how this person experiences the nature and so on, but also about the personal dimension of this person, because you always come to that at some point. And usually it takes 3 hours. We go into the forest for 3 hours. Then I have groups with a maximum of, let's say, 8 people. And it's more about discovery and getting to know forest bathing. We don't go as deep into your personality, but it's a nice thing to be together with people going with you. But then I have other things. I want to organize travels, like going to nature on travel, really like a week or something. I have a program for people who are in recovery. like from burnout, from chronic illness, from depression, which is also a very different approach because you're more sedentary. You stay in one place and you do it differently. And of course, with my background in HR, I really want to also like organize this for companies and corporations and teams. Because it's a really good thing for prevention of burnout and stress, but also it's a boost for creativity, for concentration, and even team building could be organized around that. So yeah.
Yeah, very nice. So, but you feel a little bit difficult right now with COVID thing, and even though it's very beneficial for one hand, as we saw it, because of the immune system and all, but in a way, it's not, you are not able to do it. So
Yeah, that's very well put. Yeah, it's very well put because indeed it's very ironic because we should be out there as much as we can for our immunity. It works as a vaccine almost. The thing is that with COVID now, I can't take groups, at least not in Belgium. I can take small groups, but they have to wear a mask, and that kind of disrupts the experience, especially the smells of the nature, which is a very important thing. So right now I'm only doing solo things, and I was hoping to like launch my website and go for like the big promotion of my activity, but I have to put it on hold for now. Yeah. But I give you the opportunity to do these kind of things and continue my research and my experience around it.
Yeah. So you talk about the benefits. Also curious to know a little bit more about the long-term benefits of this practice. So according what we were saying, what are the long term? Because it's interesting also to see that graphic that you show us, even the immune system, that after 1 month, the benefit is still there, but there's other long term benefits in the more, not only the ones that are exposed, that you can talk us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, there's a lot of research going on, it's now already showing that interacting with nature has deeper effects than just making you feel better for a few hours. It's going way deeper. For example, I read a study recently that if you're spending a lot of time in nature, it lowers your tendency to be narcissistic and greedy. And it will also make us more grateful and in general less materialistic. And that means not just after it, just like in general. If you keep doing that, you become a different person. And I read another study that clearly showed that children who grow up in interaction with nature end up being more intelligent, like IQ score is going up, and more empathetic than children who don't. And for me, forest bathing is a very relevant contribution to the challenges of this time. First of all, very simple, because it raises awareness about ecology and climate, and it brings the attention to the crucial role that our natural environment has and of the protection of it. Because it not only helps us to survive, it also helps us to be happy. That's something that people have not understood yet. So I think it's very good on the long term. And secondly, and that's a bit more philosophical, it really changes the way we feel, the way we think, the way we behave on the long term. It helps people coping, or individuals in the coping and solving of all kinds of stress and anxiety and personal issues and so on. But next to that, it makes you even more performant, more happy, more creative, more empathic, and so on. And I noticed that it works like meditation on your brain. There's been a lot of study around that too, you know. Meditating is changing the structure of your brain. And the same happens with forest bathing. It's changing the structure of how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and it's not only an impression, it's really proven. You can see that scientists, neurologists will see it in the brain. And so that's the more philosophical part to finish, is that when individuals become more healthy, mentally and physically, and more happy, and start cleaning up their shit, if I can use that word here, we will become, okay, thank you. We will become more healthy as a collective because works exponentially. Because a happy person will always be in a good place and be able to change things for himself, but also for others, and so on. So we become more healthy as a collective. And so forest bathing, and especially when it's combined with mental health coaching, is really can very much contribute to topics like regeneration, like things amarnavida is doing, transformation of societies, sustainability, and those things. So for me, that's the biggest impact on the long term. Next to what you said in the beginning, which is fantastic. You go 3 days in the woods and you have 30 days immunity that's going up. And I suspect that science is going to come with a lot of surprises in between now and the coming years. Like I said, they can prove that going into nature has a great effect on you, but they cannot yet put a link completely of how it works. It's still a bit of a mystery, which somehow I like because it keeps things kind of mystical almost. But I think in the coming months and years, it will all show up much more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are things that we are not supposed to scientifically and logically to know so much.
Maybe.
For my own experience, I always been like you. I was always very connected with nature. Actually, I have to say that what enabled me to treat myself for a lot of times of a period of big depression was my connection with nature, and even sense of belonging, of meaning, was nature that gave to me. I think it's that part that we cannot explain so much, but in a way, by me staying in nature, and I'm not saying that I was there 3 days or something like that, but always being there and connecting with trees. I hug trees, for example. I consider trees part of me, and I also go on my feet wherever I want. Intuitively, I knew in a way that is a good thing. But regardless, what I always felt in nature, that's why I also became, I didn't say in the beginning, environmental engineer in all this building amarnavida towards the regeneration of the world and the planet and the connection between people and nature, was because of that, of the meaning that nature gives to my own life and the purpose of it. So that's why I also wanted to add to this topic and the importance that I see also in my life regarding it. That's why I found the work that you are doing so important, and that people have to open up even more. And I think this COVID thing, even though that pushes to be isolated, I think also creates us to think a little bit more about our connection in other things, actually also connecting with nature, such an important thing. So I think we have some questions here.
Yeah, let's see.
We'll see if and if people have more questions right now, please go ahead and do it. So we have here Louis' question then. Can you link forest bathing with other forms of enjoying nature, like rambling, and the current trend to chart, design and mark nature pathways?
I have a question. What is rambling exactly?
I'm not quite sure. What's rambling? I think it's like being out there, just no matter what, I think.
Well, like I said, it can be combined with a lot of things. Well, I want to take the example of the Japanese again. They have 64 stations that are made for that, which means it's a forest that is only used for that. It has a certain type of infrastructure that goes with it. But that's maybe on a more structural level. But I think Luis means it on a more individual level. Well, yeah, you can combine it with anything, actually, as long as you're conscious, being conscious of what you're doing, a bit like mindfulness, And as long as you're connecting with nature in any way, it can even be literally bathing in the sea, because you always feel good when you get out of the sea or a river or lake, but there is really a way to do this in a very conscious way that you feel even more powered up by it. And chart design and mark nature pathways, why not? Because it's discovery. Because that moment when you want to chart a piece of nature, a forest, for example, you're going to be connecting with all the elements, because you'll be like, okay, this is this part, and these are the trees that are there, and you're going to be, I think it's possible, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He also asks us if can these activities help our society to put greater economic value in the natural landscape and avoid its destruction through development, for example, with intensive agriculture and forestry. I think you already
I kind of answered that, huh? Yeah. It's only in the way that when a lot of people and governments, especially, and societies and so on, communities, will be aware that it's healthy for you. And once we know it's healthy, it might lead to a part where nature will be more protected, because it will be used for useful things, or at least in their perspective, useful things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we have to invite a lot of leaders to do forest bathing. Could be a So also, I agree that happy, healthy individuals will be more empathetic and positive in society. It's just a comment. Maybe when people are coaching, 10,000 people are coaching in nature, and their taxes show that nature does have value. So,
Exactly, Luis. That's exactly it. And thank you for saying that rambling is just walking into nature. It's a word that I use. So thank you. I will use it from now on.
Okay, so I don't know if people have more questions until now. No, so I think I don't know. Anthony, that if you want to add something before we close our section, I leave it up to you if you want to add something. Or I know that you are now stopped in a way, but you are still doing some solo things, as you explained. You are launching your website. Maybe you can show your contacts. I also want to add that amarnavida, what actually we're going to do, also this kind of service, and Anthony will also be supportive of them in amarnavida, because we're all about the regeneration of the planet is only possible with the self-regeneration of people too. So it's a very holistic approach that we have to have regarding these issues. And so also Anthony, with this knowledge and experience, will add something to us. But if you want to explain a little bit more about your contacts, and if you want to add something else, please do it.
Okay. Well, again, thank you to amarnavida for including me in a lot of things. I'm looking forward to it. So as I said, because of COVID situation, I'm really unable to really launch my whole activities, because it's very simple. I don't want to have people contacting me like, hey, we're a group of 10 people, we want to go forest bathing, and I have to say, sorry, it's only from January on. No, that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So what I do is solos, but of course you have to come all the way to Belgium. I don't know where you are, Luis, for example, but so that's what I do. You can contact me for that. My website is not really online yet. But I will put my email here in the contacts, and you can also find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well, for those of you who still use Facebook. I still do a lot of things solo, which can be, let's say, just nature discovery, like going classic forest bathing, like through the senses and with mindfulness, or a solo experience with more of a personal approach, more coaching incorporated. It depends on what you want, and I will of course design a session towards the needs and the questions. but also a lot of people were like in recovery. For example,
You left the session just for 30 seconds.
I disappeared.
Yeah.
I disappeared. Okay. So I was saying that I'm also doing for recovery. So people who are coming back from chemotherapy and so on. So for all these things, you can contact me. Or if you have ideas, don't hesitate to contact me as well. Or collaborations, it can absolutely be possible. I've received one question, I think by now 25 times, which is, do you do forest bathing for kids? And I keep answering no, because it's a totally different approach. And unfortunately, I'm not I'm not a educator or a teacher or anything for kids, but it might be interesting to find a partner or a cooperation in which we can make this, because I think it's a very, very good thing, not only for the health of our kids, but also for the education. And like I said, it changes their brain structure. So it's really, really interesting to do. And many parents are asking me this. So this is a shout out that I do towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, so very nice. So yeah, Louise is talking about the Waldorf schools,
See it. I should look it up. I will put my email in.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know, and you will find me on Facebook on Anthony Ball or LinkedIn. If you go through amarnavida, you will find me for sure.
Exactly. So follow us also in amarnavida. We also are going to do, and maybe that's a thing, to do things with kids. Actually, a psychiatrist, very well known, I think is American or Canadian, I don't know. He always talk about hyperactivity.
Yeah.
The kids, it's one of the things that nature and the connection with nature is so supportive of it that decreases the level, and even a lot of kids don't. It's not hyperactivity. What they are lacking is the contact with nature. Is one of the things that it talks about.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's very important what you are saying. It's normal that more and more parents want to have kids doing it. So it's totally open field that could be open in that regard.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
it's really
or even somehow a combination, because maybe some parents want to come also with their kids, but it's a different approach. But maybe a combination is possible. Why not? And as you said, ADHD. I think the same person you're talking about is Richard Louv. He talks about nature deficient disorder, which is what I described earlier, that we just lost connection, and we're not made to be disconnected from nature. Yeah.
Yes. Maybe I ask you a question, because one more, if you I had this practice to do forest bathing during the night.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it adds something valuable on it, it's different from the day. If you want to tell us a little bit more about it, it's just a question that came up to my mind right now.
It's a very specific question. Okay. Scientifically, there is not really a difference. You will be in the forest and you will have the same effects, right, in the night. But for me, on a subjective point of view, an intuitive point of view, the night has much more calm and relaxation in it when you go at night into forests, even though it sounds very scary. And that's maybe the other thing. It can be very, very confronting to go at night into the woods. It's going to wake up a lot of fear and anxiety and very old instincts of being afraid of the dark. And only that is very interesting, because only that will already put you in confrontation with yourself. And if you manage to, maybe you should go with a guide at that moment. If you manage to get over that fear, you will notice that nature in the night is extremely calming and extremely peaceful and serene. I don't know if that's your impression of it.
Yes, it's scary. It's also, for me, I didn't do with any light.
Yeah.
So also the sense of being in the dark and walking in the dark with any light opens another field on the brain.
Yeah.
Because I have to rely in other senses. That is not the vision part of it. So I feel that is more profound the experience, because normally it was 2 hours walking on the woods, totally in the woods, to end the experience is, it's what I feel. It's deeper because in some way it's the fear is there because we never know, but also there's a sense of being more immersed in the nature because it's more it's a very powerful experience, I might say. So
Glad we agree and we feel the same. Myself also, I love to go in the nature in the night. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to do so because we have a curfew in Belgium because of the COVID situation. But usually I tend to go in the woods at night. Yeah.
okay.
Very good.
So once again, we are almost 1 hour of our tea talk. I hope that people had enjoyed us, and thank you so much, Anthony, once again.